Welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. So the calendar has struck February. That means we are very close to spring training. 11 days away, guys. So what I kind of wanted to do from now up until the point of the season is do player previews for the starters, the 9 guys that are going to be in the lineup, the starting rotation, the bullpen, just kind of give you guys some content of what I believe their 2026 season is going to be. And the first guy I'm going to start out with is Alec Bohm. And I did this for a specific reason. I did this because me personally, I think the roster said I don't think there's going to be any trades. I don't have any faith in Dave Dombrowski to make a good trade where he's at with his career. But if he does make a trade, I think the only possible person that's a starter that could get traded is Alec Bohm. So I kind of wanted to get this out there before a possible trade were to happen. Just kind of, I want to talk some Alec Bohm before maybe he goes off to his new adventure. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be the starting third baseman. But let's get into it. So I want to start this season or this episode off with his 2024 and how it ended, because his 2024 season was a tale of two halves. He obviously had the great first half to where he was the starting third baseman in the National League All-Star game, but then his second half, it was rough. He had a sub 700 OPS. He hurt his hand, I think, at the end of August, to where I think that did limit him in his production. But if you look before that, even after he suffered the hand injury, he was struggling. And then the benching in the National League Division Series. So Alec Bohm, it's funny because you could say, what is the worst point of Alec Bohm's Phillies career? You could say the 2022 game against the Mets where he had the 3 errors to where he said, I bleep and hate this place. Or you could say when he got benched in the playoffs. Me personally, I still think it's the I bleep and hate this place, but Alec Bohm came back from that and was a productive player. So I give him credit for that. But at the end of the season when we lost to the Mets, it was, in my opinion, it was a foregone conclusion that Alec Bohm was going to get traded. And the rumors were saying that, all the reporters were saying that. But where I think the Phillies missed the mark of, they overplayed their hand in evaluating Alec Bohm's trade value. And for me, that's a tale of oldest time, as Dave Dombrowski is overplaying his hand. Because, excuse me, with Alec Bohm and other players, well, we got to look at Dave Dombrowski's history. I think the game has passed him in the sense that back in the day, he would fleece people. He would get the deal that he wanted. He would undervalue people, and he'd get really good assets back. That's what made him a great president of baseball operation. But I think other president of baseball operations got smarter. They kind of understood Dave Dombrowski's game to where I think the game has passed him to where I want Preston Mattingly in there. And if you look at the past few off seasons, that proves my point. They were marketing Alec Bohm in his trade value as a starting third baseman of the National League All-Star game, which technically he was. But again, I think other president of baseball operations are smarter to where they could see the trend. It was a really, really good first half and essentially a really, really good April and May, to where I understand doing that at the beginning of the offseason because you want to see if someone will make a bad trade for you. But once you realize what his value is not, you have to pivot and get the best asset you can in return. The Phillies didn't do that, and it put Alec Bohm and the whole team in a weird situation because coming into spring training, the first question Alec Bohm got was all about the trade rumors. Was he happy to be back? This, that, and the third. Now, Alec Bohm did handle that very well, in my opinion. He spoke to the media. He was like, I understand it's a business, to where I'm just happy to be back and I'm looking to get to work. I really liked that response, and I wasn't expecting that because I do believe Alec Bohm lacks maturity, but in his 2025 season, I think he did take a step in the right direction. Granted, he's 28 years old. You would have liked that a few years ago, but beggars can't be choosers, right? And he did limit. So the thing about Alec Bohm is it's not so much about his play. It was just more like the slamming of the helmets, the whining, the pounding in the dugout when you're up 10 runs against Kansas City, to where that was a big contributing factor into him getting benched in the postseason, to where in the offseason, I wanted him gone because I simply didn't think Alec Bohm could handle that sort of pressure. And he did kind of falter in April where he struggled mightily. But you didn't see him show his frustration as much as he used to. So that was a point in the positive direction for Alec Bohm. But the thing about Alec Bohm is he is who he is. When we drafted him third overall, You drafted a 6'5" third baseman out of college. You would have thought that he would have built into his power and kind of adjusted with his frame. Unfortunately, he didn't do that. But let's get into his 2025 season review before I go into my preview for the 2026 season. So let's get into for his career averages, just to give you guys a little reference point. 279 average, 328 OBP, 743 OPS. In 2025, he batted 287 with a 331 on base percentage and a 740 OPS. So essentially, Alec Bohm does what Alec Bohm does, to where I think it was a really good season for him. I think Alec Bohm is the player he is. He's not going to turn into a 35 home run guy. He's not even going to turn into a 25 home run guy. That's just not his game. The problem is with the current roster construction, he has to bat fourth for you. And I think that is putting Bohmer in a spot to where he's looked at by the Philadelphia media as a guy that's protecting Bryce Harper. And I think that's unfair to Alec Bohm. I think Alec Bohm is a guy, if he's batting sixth or seventh for you in your lineup for a championship winning ball club, I think that's very effective because he puts the ball in play. He doesn't strike out a lot, but that's not your four hitter because your four hitter should have a potential threat of sending a ball out of the ballpark. And Alec Bohm, before I get into 2026, he had a really good postseason in it against the Dodgers. He batted 333 with an 889 OPS. But the problem is those hits were singles. I don't think he had one double. I think it was all singles, right? But he walked a lot. So he didn't chase, which is very good. But the problem is pitchers are willing to not pitch to Harper because they know Bohmer isn't a threat to really put one in the second deck or even in the first row with CBP. It's just, they're fine with the singles. And that's really the problem of this whole scenario of Alec Bohm should not be protecting Bryce Harper because Bryce Harper won't see any pitches. Now, me personally, with the lineup construction going into 2026, I would flip-flop Kyle and Bryce. I would see if that might make a difference. And then I would put Adolis Garcia in the four hole. Again, not a great option, but beggars can't be choosers. I would really prefer Bowman to bat fifth or sixth. If you want to mix up the lefties, put Marsh or Stott in there. That's fine. April and May is really just a feel-out process. But yeah, it just goes back to the point to where the Phillies have needed a four-hitter to protect Bryce Harper the last 4 years, and Dave Dombrowski has failed to do that. But this isn't really a Dave Dombrowski episode. It's more just about Alec Bohm. So let's get into my preview for the 2026 season for Alec Bohm, stat-wise. I think he's going to bat 280. I think he's going to have a 765 OPS, maybe a little uptick in power slightly. It's a contract year. Maybe that puts some motivation into him to where he wants to get paid next offseason, and about 15 homers. I think Alec Bohm is going to be exactly who Alec Bohm is. He's not going to be a power guy. He's going to get your hits. He's going to have a high average. He's not going to strike out a lot. He's not going to walk too many times. So Alec Bohm essentially, in my opinion, is going to be who he is in the 2026 season that he has been for his entire career. And the only other options, I guess, at third base now, because obviously we wanted Bo Bichette. That didn't happen. But you could trade Bohm for a middle reliever. I would not be upset about that, to where third base, you can let Otto Kemp rock. You could let Amundo Sosa get some more time because Aiden Miller is coming. And Aiden Miller is a big X factor in this whole 2026 season and at third base, because the only thing I worry about is if Aiden Miller is playing phenomenal in AAA, but Bohmer's having a good year, Turner's having a good year, Stott's having a good year, to where there's not really a spot for him to take over at the major league level. Now, I've talked about getting creative, putting Trey Turner in the outfield if one of the outfielders is struggling. Because in my opinion, and there's been rumblings about maybe Aiden Miller taking some fly balls to spring training, maybe left field, maybe center field. In my opinion, I think that would be a disaster, only because I want to take as much pressure off the young kid that I can, because it's going to be a struggle in and itself from the offensive side, to where if you have to put the idea of him learning a new position at the major league level with him adjusting to major league pitching, I don't think that spells success for the Philadelphia Phillies. So me personally, now this is under the notion that everyone in the infield is playing well, right? There could be easily a scenario to where Bohm struggles and then Miller just comes up, take his position, or Stott struggles and then Miller comes up and takes Stott's position. But the problem with the Bohm side of it is, if Aiden Miller takes his spot, and you don't trade Alec Bohm or whatever to where he's still on the roster, that could create a similar problem to where when Nick Castellanos lost his starting job. Because the thing about the Philadelphia media is they will look for anything to write their story and get clickbaits. To where I think it would be like a dark shadow similar to what it was with Nick Castellanos in August into September and into the playoffs. Now, I think Nick Castellanos could have handled it a little better, but when you're getting rage baited by the media over and over and over again, you can get very frustrated to where I think something similar would happen with Alec Bohm. To where if you traded Alec Bohm earlier in the offseason, got some decent value, you're not going to get anything great for Alec Bohm because I think president of baseball operations are smart. They understand who Alec Bohm is to where you're not going to get the value you think you were going to get in the 2024 offseason. So I probably would have preferred them to trade Alec Bohm, let Otto Kemp play third, because the way they talked about Otto Kemp, they were super high on him at the winter meetings, and they're talking about him. And I think Rob Thompson was like, well, Otto Kemp's going to have a full year. But if you have that much hype for Otto Kemp and he's strictly a platoon player for Brandon Morris, that doesn't really make any sense. And then it just goes back to the transition. I want Aiden Miller's transition to the big league level be as seamless as possible because I do think he's going to be ready midsummer. But in totality, I think Alec Bohm is going to have a Alec Bohm season. But it's going to be very interesting to see how all the other pieces move, how Turner's playing, how Stott's playing. If Miller is really ready to take over at the major league level, where does he play? Do they stick him in the outfield, which I think that's going to be a mistake? Do they get creative and move Trey Turner to the outfield? I would love that. Um, but let me know your guys' thoughts on Alec Bohm. Do you want him back? Are you expecting anything different from Alec Bohm? Do you think he's going to have a similar year? Do you think he's going to fall under the pressure of a contract year? Me personally, I just think he's going to have a Alec Bohm season, bat 280, 740 OPS, 750 OPS. But if he's your four hitter, that's a mistake. Oh, the only other thing I guess you could say as an X factor is maybe Eugenio Suarez is still out there. If you can get Suarez on a 1-year deal and just flip Bohm for a middle reliever, I would love that. But the thing about Eugenio Suarez is I think he's going to get like a 2-year deal to where it doesn't really make sense with the Aiden Miller timeline. So I wouldn't be opposed to bringing in Eugenio Suarez over Alec Bohm, but I don't think they're going to do that. So I think Alec Bohm is going to be rocking at third till he isn't. So that'll do it for this episode of Baseball for Maniacs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about Alec Bohm and his 2026 season preview. Thanks and have a good one.